And welcome back to the ATI Podcast. We're here for episode 105, launching season 3 with our friends, and see you next Tuesday. Once again, we've got Drew back on the program. How you doing, Drew?
Not so bad. Yourself, Barrett?
Doing great. I'm so happy to have you back on the show. Been looking forward to talk to you guys. Been seeing a lot of cool stuff you guys have been up to in the last year as well. It's almost been a year to the date since the last time we talked. And I know you've had a lot of opportunities doing stuff in promotion of Distractions last year since we last talked. I'm sure you got all kinds of road stories. We're going to get into a little bit of that today, but of course, we wouldn't be doing you justice if we weren't going to be talking about the new album today as well, Relapses, so I'm really looking forward to talking about that too.
Yeah, me as well.
First and foremost, how's the last year treated you?
Awesome. Actually, Distractions came out just about a year ago. I mean, we obviously planned this we kind of scrambled to make it work, but we wanted Relapses to come out 1 year to the date. Of course, releases have to happen on Fridays, so it's coming out the 16th, not the 17th. But we actually mirrored everything as far as like single releases. They were all spaced the same and stuff like that. So we're trying to be clever with everything. But yeah, I mean, since Distractions, we've played a handful of really awesome shows. We tried to do what we could. We're all adults and have day jobs and stuff like that. So it's not like we could just hit the ground running again like we were 25. Play some great shows. Right after the release of the record, we did a little 4-day run with Bandit. Later on in the year, we did a little 4-day run with our buddies in METH, who also just had a CD come out. So if you haven't checked that out, Shame by METH is absolutely chef's kiss. And then later down the road, we did a couple days with Chapong and Bandit once again. Then we also had a little run with some local boys here in Michigan called Sawtooth, hardcore band from the Detroit area, just a bunch of party animals. And we did like some really random markets. We did like Lexington, Kentucky, and like West Virginia and stuff. It was just like this B-side shows, and it was awesome. There's just these little shitty bars and stuff. So there was some really fun shows with those guys. And then we closed out 2023 with that fucking From a Second Story Window show, which was like,
hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it was killer year, man. We played just a shitload of great shows. And the response from Distractions was absolutely stellar, Yeah, I can't complain, that's for sure.
I know you guys were getting a lot of love, kind of those year-end lists, various publications out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were you guys, like, really feeling the love, just not virtually, but, obviously out on the road and, beyond just the fans probably that you guys already had established, picking up new fans and things like that as well throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, all the shows we did live were all great turnouts. Some of them were exceptional. Obviously, like the From a Second Story Window show was one of the bigger shows that we've played since our return. But I mean, like right off the bat, Distractions came out, and we played St. Vitus like a week later, and it was sold out. And just absolute chaos at the show. And so yeah, I mean, overall, it's been a really well received. I think it's seeing a lot of the old fans come back out. It's fun to see these like dudes that are our age that have jobs that are like, I guess I'll fucking come out and see you on a Thursday.
Yeah. I'm there myself.
Yeah, exactly. I do it. I'm about to drive 2 hours to go see Glassing and Author Punisher in a couple weeks on a Tuesday. So
man, that would be yeah. That's
Yeah, we
Arthur
just
Punisher hasn't come through here yet, and I've been really excited to check him out live.
he's so good. I saw him last year at the Sanctuary, and they're playing there again. We just did this little run with METH. I'm wearing their
sporting the METH shirt there tonight in the conversation.
Yeah. So we just did a little weekend their CD release show, which was absolutely fucking bonkers. Like we just did 3 shows with METH and Def Club. Absolutely some of the best shows ever, and it was just such a great way to start 2024 out. We played at the Talia Hall in Chicago, and they like set up the stage in the middle of the floor. We had this giant circle pit going around the entire stage. We got a video of it on Instagram if you get it bored enough to check it out. But. Def Club played, and Scott, the drummer of Def Club, is also the drummer in Glassing. So I get to hang out with him again in a couple weeks, and then of course the Author Punisher. So I'm excited to meet Tristan. Maybe we'll be best friends and make electronic music together.
That's cool, man. Absolutely.
A man can dream. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We've mentioned it already. Of course, you guys have the new album coming out here next week, Relapses. Yeah. And the fact, that it is electronic forward in its nature. Yeah. Let's talk about like how the inception of this idea started percolating. Like, where did you get the idea? Like, hey, we're going to do this. Was this something you guys had in your back pocket all along?
No, definitely not. Honestly, it was kind of like a snowball effect of ideas that kind of just ultimately culminated to what it became. That's why it's kind of scattered. Like, it was funny when I first was like coming up with all these ideas, because there's like some tracks we did but had different vocalists, and then also we close out the record with a collaboration that's a new track. So it's like there's a lot of elements that came together to make Relapses what it is. I guess it really started with the collab track. Even though Frontierer ended up being one of the last artists to jump aboard the project, that was kind of the catalyst for trying to do something for us, I guess is how I've been telling people. So basically, the closing track to Distraction, Strange Music, when I was working on it before we finished the record, I had about 4 minutes of music to it that kind of, after the arpeggiating guitar stuff that closes out the record right now, it kind of started to go into this weird, like, atmospheric synthy stuff, and then ultimately came into this, like, kind of industrial stuff. And I don't know. I kept going back to it and coming back to it and hemming and hawing. Like, is it just too much? There's not enough electronic stuff. We're not an electronic band. But at the same time, like, it's a big passion of mine. Since probably 2011, when I first bought a copy of Ableton, I've been into, like, getting more into production, and that's how I learned how to record and stuff. I mean, if it wasn't for learning electronic music, I wouldn't be able to record Distractions. But, I used to make a lot of stuff. I had a SoundCloud and stuff back in the day, and Fox is the same way. Every member of the band has different music that we all listen to. We all have, like, metal that we like, but we all have vastly different metal tastes, as far as like subgenres go and stuff. Like Fox specifically, he loves, stuff like Bleeding Through and the Rentcore and From a Second Story Window, like a lot of the earlier metalcore stuff. And I gravitate towards newer grindcore bands and a lot of gore grind stuff from yesteryears, Last Days of Humanity, Regurgitate, like. That's what I'm putting on when I'm listening to my heavy music. So when it comes to not heavy music, that's where Fox and I have commonalities. We're huge Nine Inch Nails fans. Youth Code is another one that we're just both absolutely obsessed with. Author Punisher we just mentioned. Bands like Health and Prodigy and stuff from yesteryears. And just, there's so much amazing music out there. And honestly, like a lot of these, or all these bands on Relapses, or all these artists, were all artists that him and I both listen to. We like all these bands. I've been fans of all of these bands for if at least a year or two, if not longer. It depends. Some of these bands are pretty newer, especially like DEATHTRIPPA and THOTCRIME,
Right.
Like there's some more up and coming artists. Yeah, so ultimately that was like our commonality musically, him and I. And like I said, we ultimately decided to cut it off distractions. So I had this like music that was like I spent a lot of time on. It was not anywhere near done, and it's not anywhere near what the final product is. Obviously, I'm sure you heard the Go Room, the song that we did with Frontier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is one of the best on the album too. It has such a.
It might be my favorite personally. It was one that I heard immediately, and it just I'm constantly thinking about it.
It reminds me a lot of like Nine Inch Nails meets Rammstein. Kinda.
Yeah, a little bit.
But then with like Chad and Fox being so vastly different sounding vocalists, it's just so cool. I'm really, really stoked on how it turned out. That's the story in the nutshell, really, is it started with just that stuff. Like I had this stuff that I wanted to finish, and then that was the first idea. I was like, hey, we should do something different. Maybe do like an EP or something that's like electronic forward or something, and just show that, we are a band that's not just grindcore. We're not your average grindcore band,
Right.
Like we always throw like a doom track, or we have some pretty tracks and stuff, and we're an experimental band, so we wanted to experiment more. And then fast forward till about February, so just after the release of Distractions, we were playing in Baltimore, and Curly Swope from ZOMBIESHARK was at the show, and him and I were hanging out in the back room eating these Rice Krispie treats filled with weed that he brought me. They're like this giant, like, we're just like eating.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
I'm like, how much is in here? Because it could be like 10 milligrams, could be 200, who knows? And he's like, I don't know, I just bought it from some dude. I gave him $20. I was like, it's probably a lot. So I was just kind of telling him about my love for electronic music, and I was telling him I love his shit. His EP that was out at the time was absolutely incredible. Which it's crazy. His new full length is coming out the same day as Relapses.
Wow.
216. That
is a very wild happenstance.
Yeah, so he's got a bunch of music to promote that day. But yeah, I was kind of just chit-chatting with him, and like while I was talking to him about like just the whole situation, that I had this like electronic stuff, and like I just kind of spouted out, I was like, man, do you know what'd be cool is if we did like a remix album of Distractions, and then I just like finished this track, gave me a reason to finish this track. And he was like, dude, if you do, I wanna remix I'll Never Smile Again. Which is what he ended up doing. That was just like, yeah, that's a really great idea. And then, fast forward again another couple months, and from there, it was just a snowball effect of ideas, I smoke weed, and
sure.
I'll be at work, and I'm a mailman, so I'm just listening to music all day, and I just like kept thinking of ideas, I was like, all right, I'm going to take the 2 cyber grind tracks from Distractions and reverse engineer them into actual grindcore songs. So like I took the programmed drums and sent just the track to Jimmy, and I was like, learn these, we're going to record real drums, because now I have a capability of recording drums in my studio. I have since upgraded.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, it was just, like I said, it was just a snowball effect. And from there, it was just a matter of finding all the artists, and like every artist obviously has like their story, some of them we know really well, and some of them were just like I'm going to shoot my shot and hope for the best. And, like that's how we got the John Connor brothers, which I don't know if you're familiar with them at all.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to be more familiar with the band that they're in, LLNN.
Yes.
Which is like a very theatrical, just down-tuned awesomeness.
Yes.
One of Fox and I's favorite bands. Both of us love that band. Like the John Connor guys, they're from Denmark, and I just randomly emailed Rasmus and was just like, hey, I'm this dude from America. We got this record, and we're going to do remixes. Any interest? And he replies, yes, I would love to remix your grindcore song. I'm like, sweet.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it was just, and then like the Child of Night remix, which was like the second track on the record. That's Jonathan Thompson from Heartland. You remember the Heartland from back in the day?
Yes, absolutely.
Jimmy, actually, our drummer Jimmy was in the Heartland back when we were back in like 2007, 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
So Jonathan Thompson's just been like a friend for literally 16 years. Like, I've known this dude for fucking ever. And on that same tour that I was talking with Curly Swope, we actually played in Pittsburgh where Jonathan lives, and I was chit-chatting with him, and it was the same kind of thing. I was like, yeah, I was thinking about this remix album. Any interest?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it just kind of all came to fruition, man. I had, like, these little notes on my phone, and I was keeping track of, like, which song was which and stuff. And the biggest thing that I really, really love about this record, and I know how a lot of musicians are, so they'll understand how difficult it is to do this, but I gave these artists full autonomy. Like, I wanted to relinquish control on purpose. Because, like, you know, I'm nuts and I write weird music, and like I'm definitely that person that like spends a lot of time writing something, and if anyone else in the band hates it, then like it's an issue. I don't mean to be, but I'm stubborn. You know what I mean? Like
I hear that, man. That's me.
Yeah, and you know, there's that guy in every band. There's that dude that just churns out the riffs, and if somebody has something negative to say about it, then it's like, well, you fucking write something then.
Right. Get all defensive.
Yeah. I don't mean to be. For me, for this project, it was just like I just want to see what happens. I don't want to be like, oh, make sure you use this vocal line, or oh, make sure you use this part in this song. I think it would be really cool, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I literally I gave the artist the multi-tracks, you know, each track individual, so it was like a folder of files, and was just like pick and choose whatever you want. And just do it. And actually, when I first started asking artists, I even let them pick the song. You know, I asked Jonathan, like, what do you want to do? I'll do What a Funny Girl Used to Be. And Curly obviously wanted to do I'll Never Smile Again, you know, so I let them even pick the songs. Honestly, the only control I had was the curating of the artists. Like I knew going into what Curly would do for his track, you know, and I knew going into John Connor what the output would be.
Right.
But that was it. Like I didn't know how good it was going to be until I got it all back, you know.
Like you don't want all the artists doing the same songs, of course. I mean, I guess it's a little bit different. Who was it? Metallica here in the last few years had like 50 different people do Enter Sandman, which was kind of an interesting experiment to hear everybody's different interpretations. You know, you got, Mac DeMarco doing Enter Sandman, which is totally out of left field. You wouldn't expect that, you know?
Yeah, and a lot of people do that. I know THOTCRIMES sometime last year did an EP where they had like 3 or 4 people do the same track kind of thing. And that's really cool. And, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we were kind of going more for the Fear Factory remanufacture, demanufacture thing. Yeah. That was actually the only reason we decided to rename the songs. Only like 2 or 3 people even pointed this out or figured it out, but all the track titles off Distractions are actually Frank Sinatra song titles.
Really?
Yeah, which you can't copyright a song title. That's why there's like 400 songs named Love, which is actually why the Strange Music got renamed to the word love, just to kind of pay nod to the fact that love is the most commonly named song. Like if you search just the name Love, there's so many songs named Love or Love, or all the song titles off Distractions were Frank Sinatra, because he's like, to me he's the biggest artist ever to live. He's everybody has, every artist throughout the history since Frank Sinatra's been around has either covered it, stolen a loop from it. I mean, there's so many top hits that just like pulled a little piece from a Frank Sinatra song.
Very impactful.
So then when Relapses came to fruition, I was chit-chatting. I was like, Fox, you should just name these like you were to name them based on your lyrics. Because he took the song titles. I named the songs. I wrote them, so I felt like I didn't want the vocalist to come in and give the song a name. So he kind of like took the song title and like played with it a little bit, but not necessarily, wrote a song about the title either. Like he wrote about some of the shit that was going on with him and stuff like that too. So I was like, well, look back at your lyrics. What would you name all these songs? So he actually went through and gave me 2 track names for each song, which was nice because I got to choose.
Yeah, That's cool.
And so yeah, we just kind of went back and forth about it and just decided to rename it. But again, like I said, that was kind of like a play on the whole Fear Factory thing, you know? They renamed all the tracks just so everybody would be frustrated and go, okay, which one is that track? I kept them in numerical order, which was that was actually the hardest part about relinquishing the control. Because, like, for example, the Child of Night song is like the only dance song on the record. Everything else is aggressive.
Yeah.
And he happened to pick the second track. So the second track on the record is dancey.
Right.
Which, you know, if it was up to me, I would have put it somewhere else potentially. But at the same time, like, that's how everything fell. You know, that's how the dominoes fell. So it's just like, fuck it. It works great. Especially how I redid the opening track. I just turned like this intro into a fucking giant breakdown.
Right. Absolutely. What's kind of interesting about that too, you know, historically in music, and I don't know necessarily they do this nowadays, obviously, particularly in the last, I'd say maybe, 20 years or so, is you always actually tried to actually place, as far as your track listing was concerned, the hit was typically like track 2 on albums, especially like in the 90s. It was a whole strategy that they did. So it's kind of funny that your dance song, if you will, is
track 2.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. That is funny. I'll have to remember that when we're marketing it.
Yeah.
The dance tune is track 2. So yeah, I guess that makes me feel better about it just kind of falling that way.
Absolutely.
It's sandwiched between two bonkers songs.
Oh, it absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like the first track is just hits you so hard, and then it's like this synth pop. And then it goes right into MIKAU's edits, and that's just like pure fucking aggressive, noisy breakdown stuff. Like it's noisecore to the extreme, man. I love that song.
Yeah, I mean, that contrast, though, I think is what you would expect if somebody is doing, at least me, this ambitious task that you've taken on in being a grindcore band that is now doing electronic forward reimagining of their songs. Essentially, I know with some collaboration, but that had to be there. We were talking before we started recording that I had a chance to actually listen to the album from start to finish. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a huge fan of electronic music, but some of my favorite artists are electronic artists. You know,
sure.
I haven't went down deep rabbit holes with many artists, but there are bands, that I recognize, like in the scene and the things that they've done. Bands like a Prodigy, for example. You know, that has. Their sound has evolved over time, but like even in early years, like when I sat down and actually listened to your guys' song, I tried to pick out, even with some of the artists that I wasn't familiar with, like, well, where are they getting their DNA from? So I actually kind of went through this kind of fun task and wrote down a few different of the songs that I noticed that I thought will kind of convey, I think, the variety that you guys are bringing. And I know a lot of that's provided, I would assume, by the collaboration, of course, part of this. But, like, for example, a track that really stood out to me whenever I was listening to it, Realizing Irrelevancy. Yeah, I actually kind of immediately, I was like, this song was already very Cynic-esque, but if Cynic was to make club music, this is how this came out to me. Or like Portal, maybe, I guess, would be a better example.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I don't know that, if somebody would explain that to me, but I'd be probably turned off before I'd even listen to it. But actually having heard that example in real life, I actually love it, so.
Yeah, awesome.
That was one that really stood out to me right away. I know we've kind of talked about some of the THOTCRIME work on the album as well. The Devil in Me right away stuck out to me too. Was just kind of like the nostalgia, like 16-bit synth stuff. It's just immediately sinks its hooks.
And like that track, that like it sounds like MySpace era metalcore, but in a 16-bit like Nintendo realm. It's so weird. Right. They took the grindcore right out of the cybergraph, and that's so nostalgic is the perfect way. Like the way that song hits at the end with all they crushed that song, absolutely crushed it.
I mean, there was just like real minor things that they could have done, and it wouldn't have been out of place to be like in Mario Kart or something at times, with some of the lines that were in there. And I was like, man, this is really hitting nostalgia notes, which is not something like I think. you even going, and we'll get into this further, you know, track by track with this album, there's just so many moments that it's hitting you in various ways. It's almost disorienting. And your guys' music, because of the abrasive nature of it, was already like that. But this is, it's a different approach. It's because I didn't expect to get slapped in the face with nostalgia, and I didn't get, you know, expect to hear like Portal making club music. And then the next big one that stood out to me, of course, was The Peace. And right away, I kind of got a like Aphex Twin vibe out of that one. You know, the more
how he took like he took Fox's vocals and put them in the background, like it was like it was almost, he made it sound like a
mixed it like a shoegaze album almost or something.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. Yeah, that dude did a great job on that one, man. That was one too where it was like literally I turned it into him and I never heard from him again until like 2 days before the deadline, and he was like, "Here's the track."
Wow, that's incredible. But now that leads me to ask this question and interrupt my thought. Were there moments that, like, you know, some of these people that you guys were collaborating with, they were just bouncing ideas back to you to kind of get your approval along the way? I know in this example that didn't happen, but was there moments of that?
Clearly was one that sent it to me a couple times. He sent it to me. Well, it was funny because we set a deadline of like June or something like that. And I think I sent everything out just before April. So everybody had like 2.5 months to work on this. And I like confirmed it with everybody, like, is that enough time? And everyone's like, yeah, it works with my schedule to do this and blah, blah, blah. So we unanimously agreed on this date. And then like literally a week goes by and he sends me a track. It's like, I'm done. And I listen to it and I'm like, this is really cool. I don't know if it feels done though, man. He's like, well, all right, yeah. I'm like, you got time. Like, just, you don't need to like bring it to me or anything. I was like, but just, you know, you got a time. Like, sit on it for a while, listen to it for a while. And
right.
So he just like, you know, took the track back. And then again, you know, within a few weeks of the deadline and stuff, he sent me it again. And I was just like, hell yes. See,
right.
You just needed to listen to it.
Right.
I think he was one that was just so eager. Admittedly, he, you know, is a huge See Next Tuesday fan. So it was like really cool to work with him for that fact, you know, like he was just so stoked that I was even bringing this to the table for him.
Right.
That he just wanted to get it done and you know, flex for me. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, it's fucking killer track. Absolutely killer track.
Yeah.
Other than that, not really. Like, a couple of people sent me some sneak peeks. That was about it, really. Like, I kind of told everybody off the bat, like, not necessarily, I didn't want to hear it, but I didn't
manage. Right.
I didn't want to micromanage it. Yeah, I told everybody off the bat that I wanted them to have total autonomy, that I wanted them to have full control, and if I hear it, I'm going to give my input.
Yeah. So
for the most part, I tried to stay... You know, we just all agreed upon a deadline, and I let them have it. So for the most part, that was it. Really, the only beginning feedback was that. Actually, the realizing irrelevancy when I got their track back, and I guess there was a few where like they came back mastered or they came back too hot because we did have it mastered as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff McKinnon out of Controlled Sound, known for like stuff. He did the ZOMBIESHARK stuff. He did like Varial's stuff. So he's had a lot of experience with like metal and electronic music combined. Yeah. And he was the perfect man for the job too. I mean, right off the bat, like he was really, it was funny because he calls me. And he's like, you can tell he's worried to bring it up to me. Because as a mastering engineer, the one thing that everybody tells you is they want it to be as loud as possible, right? So he's all concerned that he straight up tells me, he's like, hey man, I don't know what's, you know, I don't know what's more important to you, to have the whole record really loud or to have every track even. Because everything, you know, there's so many different tracks from different artists and everything's mixed differently. Everything has a different vibe. Everyone has different low weight in the record. Everything, you know, there's brighter songs, there's darker songs.
Right.
And I'm like, no, dude, I want it to sound like a cohesive because everything's different. I didn't want it to sound like a compilation.
Right. Right.
So he was like, he was like, oh, thank goodness, we're on the same page. So we basically just picked the track that had the highest level of volume and tried to get everything to match to that to the best we could. So because of that, there was stuff like the MIKAU track, the Realizing Irrelevancy. There was like a few things that we needed them to turn up to just, adjust the dynamics.
Yeah.
And then the opposite goes for Reckless Life. That fucking guy, man, he sent me this track and it was like louder than anything I've ever heard. And I'm like, dude, I don't need a mastered track. Like, it needs to be unmastered. We're having it mastered as a whole. He's like, I don't have anything on my master. I'm like, what is every track just redlining? He's like, I don't know, maybe.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so like, I remember like sending him voice messages and it was just like, okay, just back off. Every track, bring them down like a decibel and see what it does. And then, so him and I, and within a few days, within a few days of that deadline, I had him doing just a little bit of volume adjustments. And in the midst of that, he ended up having some more ideas anyway. So it was like kind of worked out. Again, yeah. I don't think I wasn't influencing like their music, but it was just a matter of like, I know this isn't going to be right for mastering and stuff like that. So it was just kind of, I guess I just micromanaged the tonality of the record because again, I really wanted to avoid it sounding like compilation, even though it is, I guess, but it's
in a way, but to further that point, there is a cohesiveness there, even though we're talking about all these stark differences. It's got its ebbs and flows from track to track, if you will. And I was just like, really, that's one thing that I will say as well. And it kind of gets back to the point I was making earlier. I was like surprised by the cohesiveness with all of the collaboration. That's
right. Especially because no one knew what everyone else was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody like largely did starkly different things, The discussion track, like immediately I was getting like Euro club synth vibes going with that one.
Yeah.
The Connor brothers that you mentioned earlier.
John Connor, yeah.
Yeah, John Connor.
Desired Departure, yep.
Yeah, Desired Departure. And that had like Health and Prodigy vibes to me, like right out the gate. I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like Prodigy.
Yeah, it's so that grimy like kick drum that has that tail that's like it's just that track is so powerful. In the middle of that track there's like this little like toy box thing. Rasmus was telling me that him and his brother were like at their dad's house or something and found that in like an old shed. It was like a little toy piano. So that part was actually one of them like dicking around with this toy piano. So
that's wild.
Really, 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 really cool stuff.
Yeah, and then of course I got to shout out the Rich Lombardi involvement here. SAWTOOTH, GRIN, those guys are doing some really great stuff right now. And I really enjoyed that. Rich
and I are just, he's just like the adult male that I talk to every day. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we've actually never met in person, but sometime around when they announced their record, we started like just teasing each other on the internet, and then it culminated into just kind of talking about stuff and talking about their release and my release, and then it just turned into a friendship. And now Rich and I are somebody that we just check in on each other all the time and just chit chat all the time. And so that was an easy one for sure. It was funny because he was like, he's the busiest dude in the world, and he loves his kid. He's a super family dad. He coaches for his kids' sports and stuff like that. Yeah. And he was like, I don't really have a lot of time to do like any like write anything or anything. I was like, no, you're misunderstanding. Sure. Like it's a remix. We have the vocals written. You just need to redo the patterns how you would want to do them.
Right.
And he's like, oh, and I sent it to him, and it's like 4 lines because the song's 35 seconds.
Sure.
And I sent him the track, and he was like, oh shit, yeah, I'm doing this.
That's great.
Which that track fucking rips, man. I delved into my inner Maruda, man. I was listening to a lot of Maruda when I wrote that song. I was just like, it's a song that needs to be just fucking stupid heavy.
Yeah. Now the Frontier involvement too, I want to touch back on that real quickly because there's actually kind of a fun little connection here. Our buddy, we've had Brad Sexton on the show before, and he's drummed for a plethora of bands in the past. He's a St. Louis guy. toured with bands like Tony Danza there toward the tail end of their run as well. And Brad is really good friends with Chad Capper. They used to be in bands together back in the day. But Brad had some opportunities to fill in for Frontier and stuff until they got the guy that they have currently. So, but Chad's a good, solid dude. He's been around the St. Louis heavy music scene, Midwest music scene for as long as I can remember personally.
Awesome.
Back when my bands were active, his bands were active, and he was always somebody I looked up to in the scene. So very happy to see good people collaborating with good people on this record as well.
Heck
so,
yeah.
That was
Chad was
special moment.
Chad's such a delightful person too, man. I never had talked to him until this situation. Ped and I had just over the years, like they were trying to plan a U.S. tour years ago, and we had kind of exchanged words back then. And then when we first started announcing Distractions, he reached out to me. And he's one of those people where just like over the years, we've just asked each other questions randomly and stuff like that. So I talked to him a bunch. And then after meeting Chad, I was just like, man, you guys are all so nice. Chad is literally just a fucking nice guy. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, he's just a genuine nice dude.
Right. And I love to hear that you guys like betwixt each other, whether it's them or the Sawtooth Grin guys, like the homie checks that's going down. I love hearing that, the brotherhood in the scene and all that stuff, man. I just it warms my heart for sure.
Honestly, working with all these artists was just such a treat. Just everybody was super cool. Everybody was just super excited to be part of this whole project, especially when I started updating the list and sending it back out to people,
Sure.
After I finished the list and, sent it back to Curly, and he's like, holy shit, THOTCRIMES, DEATHTRIPPA are on this, and Frontiers on this, holy shit, and it was cool. Everybody was stoked about everybody, so it was a ton of fun.
That's amazing. Now, is there a moment with these collaborations, I'll say, that maybe you didn't have much of a connection with one of these collaborators, but have since kind of budded a further relationship?
Reckless Life.
Okay.
Him and I became best friends within 4 hours. So Reckless Life is the synth dude for Chapong.
Okay.
The grindcore band, avant-garde grindcore band from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So he goes by Reckless Life, and I honestly didn't know a lot about him. I've been a Chapong fan for years.
Sure.
I've been probably listening to them since 2017-ish or so. And their record that they put out during 2020 was one that I listened to that record probably every day for 6 months. And there's a remix on that record done by Reckless Life. And I didn't know the connection because I didn't, it was COVID and I was fucking working 70 hours a week. It was awful.
Yeah.
But that record was one that helped me get through all that shit. You know what I mean? Because it's just fucking chaos and I love it. So anyway, when I was doing this whole remix, I remember I was just listening to that record one day, just last year, and I was like, oh shit, Reckless Life, that's that remix on the Chapong record. So I reached out to them, I reached out to him, and it turns out he, is in Chapong, and I was like, oh, that's fucking cool. Yeah. And he was a big fan of us, and apparently we met many, many years ago when we played Brooklyn, back in 2007 or something like that.
Wow.
And so he was just super stoked, and instantly him and I were just messaging back and forth and just super tight. I mean, him and I are still to this day, we still chit chat. He was actually joined me on a podcast earlier this week, and it was fucking awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, just super duper cool dude. He kind of broke the rules for me. Remember I was telling you that I wanted to give all the artists full control, right?
Right.
So he was one that came back. So I was I'm assigning each song to everybody. Because I didn't want to do more than one song twice, obviously. So he comes back, and he was one of the latter people getting added, so he got the skit track, That's What God Looks Like to Me. Which I understand, it's a bunch of whooshing noises and a skit, and there's a lot of work to make that a song.
Right.
So he comes back right away, and this is where we fell in love with each other, is because he was Or he asked me, he's like, can I use stuff from other songs? And like my initial response was, no, that's against the rules. I set these rules. I didn't say that back to him, but like I remember hemming and hawing about it because I was like, I don't want someone to use the same vocal line twice.
Right.
That sounds weird, But then I was like, well, first off, the track that he's remixing is called "That's What God Looks Like to Me," so why shouldn't he have music from the whole record?
Right.
So I was like, you know what, dude, it goes against what I wanted to do, but at the same time, like, I'm fucking for it. I'm just going to be a yes man. Let's do it. So he sent me, like, this list. He sent me an email, and it was like, track 2, the guitar part at 30 seconds, the vocal part at 44 seconds, track 3, the bass line from, a minute and 10 seconds. So he had all these, like, little timestamps of little clips that he wanted to utilize. So, give me a few days. I put it all together for him and sent it back, and bam, he fucking put the work in, man. That track is bonkers.
Wow, that's awesome to hear how that came together.
Those things where it's like, this isn't what I had planned, but that's like the point of working with other people is getting new ideas on the table. And
yeah, absolutely.
And it's definitely scary to just like give everybody else the control, but it worked out, man. Like I put trust in a lot of great artists, and these artists delivered. That's for fucking sure.
Oh, without a question. And again, having been somebody that's actually listened to this, and I didn't know what to expect other than the singles that you guys had already released in advance, and I don't even think that's indicative of like what you're about to be assaulted with here, but in a good way.
Right. Well, we tricked people. I right off the gates, we did a double single that was 2 grindcore tracks. So a lot of people are just like, oh, it's a new album with more grindcore.
Right.
And it just so happened to have Kyle Medina and Rich Lombardi on it. So, but yeah, so it was like, I get that we made it confusing, but it was kind of by design. You know what I mean? Like I wanted this record is definitely an experience. So why wouldn't it have like a crazy lead up? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, you guys that's kind of like your calling card as well, It's always you guys have always done things very witty, very cheeky at times. That's just who you guys are, and I love to see that hasn't changed.
We love being cryptic too.
Yes.
Anything we can do that's subliminal.
Now the album comes out. Oh, look at that puppy run in.
That's Hazel.
We always love the animal run-ins, whether it's puppies, cats, or any of our furry friends.
She's a Chiweenie. Her mom was a Chihuahua and her dad was a wiener dog. So this is my little companion. I got 3 dogs, but she's my little one.
Homie, I guess.
She's
like hanging around you.
Yeah, I call her my companion. She hangs out with me when I'm in my studio and stuff. I always got pictures of her. Like she always like sleeps by my pedal board when I'm sitting in the studio working on stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. The album comes out February 16th, of course. We mentioned that earlier. There's 14 total tracks here on Relapses.
Since I think it's 32 or 33 minutes.
This is a quick listen, guys. So I would encourage everybody to at least give it one time through and see if it's for you. And, if you like what you see, if you like the window shopping, you guys can always go to Good Fight Music and purchase this album.
Heck yeah. They better hurry up though. We're down to like only 40 records left. So we only pressed 500. It was one of those things where it's like we don't want to press a whole bunch of this. It's one of those things that, like you said, it's a unique experience.
Yeah.
And we kind of wanted it to stay kind of unique. So once they're gone, that's it. We're only doing the 500 copies. That's why we also did like those artist copies. I don't know if you had looked into that at all. When we first announced it.
Yeah, I did notice when you guys first announced the album that you guys were doing some of that. I didn't get one myself.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically what it boiled down to is like, first off, our drummer Jimmy is a huge vinyl collector. He's got far more records than anybody else I know. And him and I were just chit-chatting like, okay, all these artists are putting in all this effort to make these cool songs for us. Let's do something to make it special for them. Besides just giving them a record, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you're on this, here's a record. So we wanted to do something special. So we like kept thinking, and we decided to do the most limited variant, which Unfortunately, we could only press 100 is the least limited you could press of something.
Mm-hmm.
So the LP3 we call it is like a blue with a red splatter and then like these white and bone colored splatters going through it. It's like this blobby looking thing. Really cool. So we did 50 of those with the regular artwork. Then we did 50 of them with an alternate artwork. So instead of the bright colored standard stock printed artwork, we got these. We ordered from another company actually. They're like matte black jackets, and we sent them to our screen printer that we get all our shirts screen printed from down in Detroit area, and they screen printed silver metallic, like a dumbed down version of the record. Cover art and the back art. So there's 50 copies that were these like hand screened artwork, and they look fucking killer.
Incredible.
I just saw pictures so far. They're on their way to me. I think I should have them Monday or Tuesday. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to start sending them out to everybody too. So
hell yeah.
Yeah. So there's like 23 artists or something that was involved with this. So each one of them, we're gifting them a limited version of that. And then we threw a few extra up online. So those first people that are like mega fans that were waiting for a drop, because, you know, we're not super cryptic and we had all this, doing all that stuff with the 11/8 leading up to the announcement of this record, trying to make like a big impact kind of thing. And yeah, the 25 copies that we put up for sale of the artist copies, they sold within like an hour. It was awesome. Very, very awesome. We have some dedicated vinyl fans.
Yeah, I remember, you know, we kind of talked about this a little bit. We all got day jobs, right? So sometimes I'll see stuff online and I'll be like, I'll save that and I'll come back to it later. So, like, after I got off work, so this was at least 4 or 5 hours later, I went back to look and see if any of those artist variants were available and it was already sold out. I was like, wow. Yeah, that moved quickly, without question.
Did you grab one of the other ones?
Yes.
One of them didn't turn out the way we expected.
Okay.
But it turned out really, really cool. So there was a variant that was supposed to be like a smog with a splatter over it.
Yeah.
So we asked them to do a Coke bottle clear and a white as a smog. So it's supposed to have like a cloud type of feel to it, but and then over top of that is like a hot pink and a black splatter. And when they pressed the record, you know, it's just plastic. It's going to react how it reacts. You never know until you try it.
Right.
The white and the Coke bottle clear turned into like what you'd expect glow in the dark to be, like a glow in the dark green, but it doesn't glow in the dark, unfortunately. It just looks like glow in the dark green. You know what I mean when I say that?
Like a neon
with
green
the black.
almost.
Yeah. It's like neon green mixed with army green. It's a really cool color. I think I have one.
That sounds cool.
Oh, let me grab one.
I think the one I recall it having pink in the one that I had ordered, so that's probably the one that I got.
Okay, so you got the clear and blue one. Because there's one that's clear with like a blue blob, and then it has a pink and yellow splatter.
Like burst in it, yeah.
Yeah, this one's really cool though.
I don't usually get too picky with my finishes unless there's just something that I see, like that. Like I'm just like, man, that'd be too incredible to pass up.
The green on it,
yeah.
The green is really cool. But yeah, it was supposed to be more of like a smog. But yeah, the Coke bottle and the white, you can see like little lines of white and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it turned out even cooler than I thought it was gonna. Because I mean, I honestly didn't know what it was gonna look like. I just picked out some colors and was like, hey, see if they'll do this idea. I'm really excited. The artwork too, the artwork on it is absolutely.
I love that artwork, man. It is so good.
Yeah.
It is incredible.
Jay, I think their last name is Echevarria. They're from like Allentown area, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But yeah, man, they are super fucking talented, man. It's an artist that I've followed for probably since 2020-ish, right around COVID.
Yeah.
You know, I always just like, I'm just one of those people that if there's a cool artist, I'll I'll click a follow. And
absolutely,
Jay's really active on the internet too. They post a lot of their work. For anybody out there, follow them. I mean, they do cool stuff like paint on t-shirts with bleach and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So it's really, they do a really, really great job. And the artwork for this album, man, like, again, it was one of those things where all I wanted to do was incorporate the original photo my wife took of the girl, girl, from Distractions,
Yes, sir.
The girl.
Yep. Yes, sir. Which was a great album artwork as well, in and of itself.
But that turned out
that's evergreen in my opinion.
Yeah. So when that girl that is in that photo it's a model that we hired. My wife's a photographer, and that was just taken at the Bay City, Michigan State Park. But yeah, I had a plethora of photos. I mean, she probably took 80 photos. So I literally just gave the drive to Jay and was just like, have at it, whatever photos you want. And they're like, do you care if I manipulate them? Or I was like,
go to town.
Have at it. Here's what I need. I need a cover, I need a back, and I need 2 insert panels. And then, you need like the face for the record and the sticker for the record. And we kept the liner stuff pretty simple because we wanted to do something special for those hand screened copies, which is not cheap, but it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't show love to the people that help you out, what's the fucking point?
Absolutely, I agree. And I was perusing your guys' merch store too, and I noticed that there's I'm a sucker for a good long sleeve, man. And that long sleeve you guys got on Good Fight's website is incredible.
Oh yeah,
I love that, man. Or incorporating that album artwork there too. Once again, man.
Yeah,
you're gonna be turning some heads with that one for sure.
Yeah, for sure, man. All that merch is sick. Yeah, so my buddy Mark DeGrucci is he works for Landmark Design. He's just a graphics guy. That's kind of my go-to dude if I have anything that I need whip together for, and he did the layout for us. I was like, hey, do you think you could whip together a few t-shirts? And like 20 minutes go by and he sends me those. I was like, yep, fucking perfect, let's go.
Very nice.
Yeah, they're killer. I love the flowers down the one sleeve. Looks really sick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
I'm a big fan of like Wrecking Fountain. I don't know if you've ever checked out their shirts. They do like horror theme or cult movies.
Nice.
And it's usually got like Japanese font and stuff down the arms or on the facings. Brodsky from Cave-In and is always wearing them. And Mutoid Man, he's a huge fan of them. And I think that's how I found out about him. I started following them, and I've probably got like 6 or 7 limited run shirts through them. I've got like Hereditary, Midsummer, awesome. But that's what that shirt kind of reminded me of your guys, because they will do different.
That's awesome.
They'll have like letters down this side, and then the other side will be like flowers, or just very unique.
Yeah, I like the mismatch thing when bands do that. It's cool. We try to get creative with our artwork.
Well, I'm just a big fan of anything different, man. And if you can do something different to stand out, go for it.
And that was I guess, speaking of Jay and the artwork, that was, I guess, the one bit of input I did put into that is I was like, the artwork for Distractions is dark. And because, Distractions is all about overcoming a demon, right?
Yes.
Like mine was alcoholism. Fox battled his own demons during COVID, and we both used that record as a catalyst to overcome. And like you can see like that death surrounding this pretty girl's face, right? I mean, that's the cover image, is literally just shadows encompassing this pretty figure. To flip side that, to remix it, when I was literally telling Jay how I interpret Distractions cover art, and their initial reaction was just like, it needs to be beautiful and like full of life. And that's where all the flowers come from. I thought it was awesome that they put those in there. How everything, because like what happens after you recover? You know what I mean? Like relapses.
Absolutely.
a relapse is obviously a hiccup in somebody's recovery, and as that was just a clever play on words, really. I personally haven't had any relapses, thank you.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, thanks. But what comes after somebody becoming sober isn't as recognized, you know what I mean? And it's just like life is better when you're off drugs, you know what I mean? A lot of people talk about how long they've been sober, but what inspires people is hearing like how much better life can be after becoming sober or battling whatever demon it is that you're battling, Everybody's got their own shit that they're dealing with, So Jay and I went back and forth for probably a half hour just kind of talking about that. And Jay had also been in recovery at one point in their life as well. So it was very it was perfect. It was one of those, another one like I reached out to the first artist, they got back to me, and we talked about the artwork, and it was everything I wanted to hear, you know what I mean? Like literally just describing this, like I want to paint a beautiful picture that is like what happens, years down the road after overcoming something. And that's where Relapse's artwork came from, again, it's just so just absolutely different from Distractions, Distractions being all super dark and scary.
And, the fact when you guys actually announced the album and kind of what the concept was and all that stuff beyond, the singles that you guys initially released, me seeing that name and knowing your guys' story for the album, I felt it was likely to be very fitting for what you were about to do. And it just kind of like, as a personal fan, it just excited me for what might be coming, to hear a little bit more in the weeds as to how that is actually tied into, and with the intent of making this something more beautiful too. And what life can be on the other side. Those are just all things that attract me, and I think you guys are going to cast a wide net with that type of message too.
I appreciate that, man.
I try to. I mean, man.
Yeah, dude, we have to be. I mean, if you listen to Fox talk at every one of our shows, I mean, he just tells people, hey, have a good time tonight. You know what I mean? Like, don't be shitty to each other. Have a good time. And that's all it is about. Why do what you do if you're not going to pass along a positive message?
Absolutely.
And that's the thing, too, is like, literally my life is awesome. And I'm not trying to, like, brag, but, like, it was hard to get where I am in my life. You know what I mean? I got 3 dogs. I got an awesome wife that comes on tour with me and sells our merch, and she's an artist and a photographer. And, I got a good job. I do live in the middle of nowhere, which has its ups and downs. But I mean,
I hear that.
I live in a town where weed is cheaper than anything. You know what I mean? So it's like,
can't complain, man.
Yeah, I'm not drinking myself stupid anymore, and I'm writing music all the time. I got a bunch of other stuff that I'm working on here in the near future, and it's one of those things where like the floodgates are open now, and like I'm in a great place in my life, And again, I'm not trying to brag or anything like that.
Absolutely.
I really mean it when I say that, man. Like the grass is greener on this side, and Relapses is definitely a record for me, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I guess not that Distractions wasn't, like I wrote those songs because they're like I like them. I listened to my own record, you know what I mean? I think when I got my Spotify Wrapped, there was only one record that I listened to more than Distractions, which was I don't know, Feasts of something or other by Sulfuric Cautery. I love gore grind though, man, so I just can't stop listening to that stuff. But I wrote a record because I like these songs. This is what I want out of music, And sure, I listened to Distractions a lot, but I also took into consideration, like, I wanted it to be like a heavy album, and I wanted it to stand. I wanted it to stand on its own. So I mean, there was other elements that took an effect that made me choose what I was writing when I was writing it. But with this record, even though I had no control over what was happening, the entire concept of the damn record was selfish. Like, this is literally a record for myself and Fox, you know what I mean? Like, it is so vastly different from everything else that you're used to when it comes to See Next Tuesday. And I'm sorry for those See Next Tuesday fans that wanted something more metal, but you know what I mean? We did this for us. And it's awesome.
I mean, again, knowing that message, not that I knew everything completely until we had our conversation tonight, but you know, I think people will be behind you still yet with, you know, I always respect any artist that tries to push the boundaries of their creativity, especially whenever they actually, you know, they're still knocking it out of the park, which I think you guys are doing with this effort without question. And secondarily,
appreciate you, man.
I got to mention, my man, like your story is such a story that is encouraging to me. I come from a family with a lot of addiction issues, you know, generational. I'm proudly, you know, and this is, you know, my cross to bear, if you will, but I'm like breaking generational addictions in my family, you know, by my father, his parents, they were all addicts. And a lot of what you guys talk about touches me. And I want to get back to what you're saying too about distractions, and that is, in a way, people don't understand this unless they're musicians sometimes, and that is a part of your artistic expression and freedom, and doing that and practicing that is sometimes like going through shit you don't want to go through. And so it can be beautiful, and it can be ugly, and it can be all these things at once. Like more than one thing can be true, you know. So personally, as a fan and having conversated with you, I've kind of started to view distractions as like, you know, it's kind of like a kidney stone. It's like something that you had to pass. It's something you had to get past. It's a mile marker in life that you had to come across, you know. And this is relapses is what can be on the other side. And what you guys do next is what you do. What you're going to do on the other side. Even if you get more back to what you guys did with distractions musically, it doesn't matter. I can just hear that in your storytelling in and of itself, you know. And
thank you.
And those are things that really excite me about a band, you know.
And I know I'm speechless. That was really well put, man. I appreciate all of that. Yeah, distractions. You're right. You know, it was something I had to do. Like, as weird as it sounds, you know, I mean, especially for anybody that listens to this that hasn't battled with any kind of addiction. I'm definitely that person that I can now, you know, 3 years of not having a drink. I can now sit at a bar and see somebody with, you know, like a group of friends out to dinner, having a couple beers. And I can just go, you know what, those people have a privilege that I don't. You know what I mean? They can have a couple beers with some friends, and they can go home and go back to work and probably not have another beer till the next weekend or next month. You know what I mean? And not everyone has that type of privilege, and I'm definitely not one that does. Because if I start, I don't stop. But I'm seeing it with different eyes, though. That's the thing, is I can see, I can go back and look at who I was and dwell on that all I want. But like you said, I got it out. And it couldn't have been in a more successly cathartic way. I mean, to be frank.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, man, I mean, that is so well put. I never thought about it that way until you said that. But man, it makes sense, because like the stuff that I'm coming up with now, I mean, like I could show you. There's stuff cooking already, man. And
let him cook. Him cook.
Yeah, dude, I got this drummer named Jimmy Blastbeats that's a fucking beast.
That boy's a drum machine, without question. Human drum machine. I love watching the drum cam footage of him all the time, man. It kind of pisses me off, Jimmy. If you're listening or watching, you do it so effortlessly, my man, and that's my primary occupation. I watch you, and it just, man, it pisses me off. You're too good.
And he just hits so damn hard too.
That's
what blows my mind.
That's what I love.
Yeah.
You got to put some mustard behind that, man. You got to slap that bitch like it owes you money.
Like there's Jimmy and I were just talking about this. Andrew from METH, who's fucking a killer drummer, killer drummer. He like looks up to Jimmy and like he calls him Chef because Jimmy's name on Instagram used to be Chef Blast Beats till we kind of gave him the moniker in the band Jimmy Blast Beats.
Right.
But yeah, he'll be like, "Hey Chef, check this out," and he'll show him like that he's been working on something that he showed him the other day or something. You know, it's like it's really really cool to see that interaction because it's like, Andrew, you're fucking killer drummer. Jimmy and I were talking about it, and it was like, but Andrew has something that Jimmy doesn't. You know what I mean? He's got this like finesse, like he's a finesse.
Right.
He you know. Like those drum beats that, dude, like, come on, you know what I mean? And Jimmy and I are just like in awe of the fact that like he looks up to Jimmy as a drummer, but yet he's just this fucking great drummer. I mean, that's a testament to this like community, though. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's bringing something to the table differently, and if you can get those opportunities to work with other people, the endless possibilities.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. Well, Drew, I had a great time catching up with you on this episode. I don't think there's any better way that we could have started our third season. We started our second season with you guys, and I was happy that the opportunity worked out. And we had another album to talk about. Heard some great backstory.
This was a really great conversation, man. Like, again, I can't thank you enough for putting so gracefully into words something that like I just knew in the back of my head what happened.
Right.
It's almost like you like just you like invoked an epiphany in my head, man. I really appreciate this.
Well, I appreciate having meaningful conversations. You know, it's one thing to get on here and kind of do the marketing thing and sell, but when you're a fan of somebody, and particularly your story, Drew, as I've told you many times, kind of speaks to things that's happened to me in my life as well.
Yeah.
I've been at those crossroads where I've almost went into, you know, to be in that addict. I certainly could have taken those paths, but you know, seeing what happened before me and hearing people's stories like yours encourages me to stay on the straight and narrow. So I really appreciate you and what you do for sure.
Yeah, man. I hope more people out there like listen to these types of stories, you know, like I know in just the last year, because just from talking about distractions last year on a handful of podcasts and how open I've become about, you know, gaining my sobriety back. I've had, you know, random fans will friend me, request me on Facebook or something and send me a message and be like, hey, you know, I was struggling. We just played with Pretty Mouth up in Canada and now like Kyle and I just are chit-chatting like every day, just kind of he's going through some addiction stuff and had just got out of some addiction stuff. He was in a bad car wreck and hurt his jaw and all that, and
right.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to hear that I've, you know, like at least invoked something in somebody somewhere and gave them, you know, that extra push, I guess. You know what I mean?
It's certainly something I've learned over the years is that you never know like how your story is going to impact other people. A lot of people feel like they're the only people going through things, and they're not. And there are a lot of other. It's not to say that you're not important. You certainly are. But actually having these types of conversations is what's healthy. You know, I know we're close in age too, Drew, and I know at least in the culture that I was brought up in, you know, men didn't talk about their feelings and, you know, like what was really bothering them. And, you know, that wasn't considered to be a man. And I'm glad to see people like us in our generations and those after us starting to break those cycles and fight those old norms, if you will. Man. You know, we're all human beings at the end of the day.
For everybody listening out there, don't bottle up inside. Ever. Yeah, man, that's the worst you can do. Pretend that you're not struggling.
Yep, and the first step is always, you know, to admit that there is a problem or that you need help, or a combination thereof. You know, they're the same thing as far as I'm concerned.
There's flowers waiting for you all.
Absolutely, and I hope we did you all justice this evening and gave you guys the flowers that you much deserve with this release that's coming out.
I really appreciate this today. Thank you for this.
Absolutely. I want to make sure that folks are following See You Next Tuesday on social media because you guys are very interactive with your community as well. I know you guys have a Facebook group out there. You guys are active on Facebook and Instagram in particular. That's where I see most of your guys' stuff at. What are those handles and where can they follow you at, Drew?
We have both Instagram and TikTok are the two that we focus on the most as far as like just video content and stuff. And we have the same handle on both of those. It's the letter C, the letter U, then Next Tuesday Grind. And then you can find us on Facebook. I think it's just See You Next Tuesday on there. And then, of course, you know, YouTube as well, I think is the same moniker as the, or handle as the See You Next Tuesday Grind one. So, but again, like our Instagram and our TikTok, we pretty much mirror each other and try to keep the content going on both of those. But our TikTok, I am actually going to start doing more of like live. I do that Eurorack synth stuff.
Yeah.
And Jimmy just got TikTok as well for Jimmy Blast Beats, so we're going to try to do more drum videos and stuff like that over on that platform too. So anybody feel like following us over there, hop on.
Maybe Jimmy can do some beat offs live on TikTok.
Whoa. Beat offs, eh?
Yeah.
PG-13.
You know, little blast beats, a little beating off.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, this is Barrett from the ATI Podcast. Episodically, I will be chatting with a featured guest bringing a spotlight to their craft. Artists, musicians, filmmakers, actors, small businesses, athletes. Nothing is out of bounds. Hear my discussion with rising talents and entrepreneurs across all traditional podcasting platforms, as well as YouTube. Like what you hear? Be sure to subscribe to the podcast channel of your choice, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. Just click the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star rating. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can get full video episodes of the ATI Podcast and see our guests in their work. Stay in touch with our ongoings, events, and guest lists across all major social media outlets: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X. Just search the ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you all for your continued support, and as always, stay safe out there. Hey there, this is Barrett from the ATI Podcast, here to talk about what we have going on the ATI Podcast Network. First, we'll start with Waxing On with R and J. The format of Waxing On with R and J is audible selections made exclusively by our hosts and brothers, Ridge Jackson and Jake Jackson. Waxing On with R and J is sure to tickle your inner eardrums with some of the most vile tones you've ever encountered, and conversely, ear candy with pop melodies, focusing on spotlighting underground and rising artists. Waxing On with R&J is another outlet of the ATI podcast community to bring awareness to many musicians' craft. Also found on the ATI Podcast Network, Nod Narb's Closet, hosted by Brandon Stewart of Edos Inn. Nod Narb's Closet is a wing of the ATI podcast programming that delves into the world of roleplay games, miniature painting, diorama making, occasional pro wrestling match watch-alongs, providing commentary with a dash of jocularity and satire, and much, much more. Of course, leading the pack is the ATI Podcast. On the ATI Podcast, we episodically invite guests onto our show to spotlight their talents, whether that's musicians, filmmakers, artists, actors, businesses, even athletes. Nothing is off the table. The focus of the ATI Podcast and its collective creative arms, whether that's Waxing On with R and J or Nod Narb's Closet, is to bring awareness and focus to people's talents. Be sure to follow us across all traditional podcasting platforms, and for the full experience, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search the ATI Podcast. Stay safe out there.